Hey everyone, it's the evening before a prep party, and so I thought it would be a great idea to go through all of my ink colors and do my ink pairings for this year's December daily collections. So I'm going to be doing a separate video for non-Ali Edwards products, but in this video I'll talk about the main kit, including all of the add-on papers that were part of this year's December daily collection. I'll talk briefly about the Stories of Christmas Past kit, and then we'll talk about the Paislee Press Kit as well. So here I have all of the papers from the main kit, as well as some of the add-on papers from the 10x8 pack, and I have some journaling cards here, and let's get started with the Altenew inks as usual. I like to start out with the Altenew inks because there is I do have all of the colors of the Altenew inks, and because there are more inks in that line than any of the other ink lines that I have, it's just more likely that I'll be able to find a matching ink color in this line. However, I did find some of these colors were a bit hard to match in terms of ink colors, all throughout, like across the Altenew line, the Ali Edwards line, and the Distress Oxides. And I'll get to those ones in a bit. But pretty much for the main kit and add-ons, we have kind of three main red colors. So we have this one here that's a bit more of a tomato red, I would say. This one here that's kind of more of a true red, that's a bit darker than this red, but it's very close. Like you might just be able to tell if I tilt this in the camera a bit. And then we have this dark burgundy red here, kind of a bit more unique colors than last year in terms of December daily colors. I think that makes them a bit harder to pair in terms of inks as well. So talking about the reds first in terms of the Altenew ink line, for this tomato-y red, I liked this fire brick color the best. And you can see, compared to that, this is a bit more of a warmer tone even than this red here, but it is a pretty close match, I would say. And here's how it looks like with the rest of those pattern papers. For the more of a burgundy color, I was having a hard time between this one here, which I think is a bit more purple than the color in this journaling card, and this one here, mahogany bark, which is, I think, slightly lighter in tone than the journaling card. Although I think in terms of warmth, I think the mahogany bark is a lot closer to that mahogany in the main kit. And you can see how these two compare with the cards in the papers. In terms of the greens, I had picked out three greens, and none of them are really exact matches to the colors in the main kit, unfortunately. I really couldn't find a color that was similar to this nice kind of more desaturated green here, because all of the colors of greens that I had were either too light or too yellow or too blue. So there was nothing really that matched this tone of green. And then in terms of this darker green, I pulled out this evergreen here to show you a comparison. This green here is obviously a bit darker than the evergreen, but at least the tones I feel like are pretty close together. So I feel like it would be good enough if you were to stamp this one out. And then I pulled out two other greens as well, just to kind of play around with the other greens in this kit. You can see that there is this green star here that kind of matches closely with the Shadow Creek color. And then this mountain pine is just another alternative to that darker green that I think still goes well with this ink color collection, even though it doesn't particularly match really any of the ink colors, the colors on these papers. So you can see what those look like here. And then because there were so many neutral colors in this collection as well, like you have this more sandy beige, and then you have this darker brown, and then you have kind of a more lighter gray. I did pick out a few neutrals that I thought would work well with this collection too. So this evening gray is a bit darker in tone than this gray here, but I do think that the color tones are close enough that you can stamp with this and it would work pretty well. In terms of this more brownish gray, I picked out the dark chocolate color, which you can see this color here in the main kit is a bit more gray in terms of the brown than that dark chocolate. The dark chocolate is a bit more of a warmer tone, but I think it would pair well with all of the other colors in this kit. And then for that lighter gray, I picked Sand Dunes, and Sand Dunes you'll see is even not that same gray. It is more of a lighter gray, and then you can see how that compares with this color here. This one I would say has a bit more of a pinkish hue to it, but I do think that the Sand Dunes would work well with this collection as well. So here are those three neutrals. In terms of Distress Oxide inks, I picked out a couple of reds that, again, I thought would go well with the reds in this collection. So in terms of that dark red here, I have Aged Mahogany, and this is how it compares with Altenews Mahogany. So you can see that Altenews Mahogany I think is a bit closer in terms of tone, but this one is darker than the Altenews one. So it's just a matter of preference for that one. And then the Candied Apple I think was quite a close match to this warmer red there. And then the Barn Door I picked out as another alternative to that other shade of red. That's not quite the bright tomato red and not quite the mahogany. So this is how that compares. In terms of greens, I've picked out two. Again, really couldn't find a color that was similar to this green here, but I did pick out Bundled Sage, which I thought matched pretty closely with the tree pattern paper. Where is it? Here it is. So I thought this shade was similar to the shade of green here, although I think this shade here is, this one here, the Bundled Sage, is a bit more yellow toned than the green here, although I think it would work pretty well with this collection. And then Rustic Wilderness is kind of like the darkest green that Tim Holtz has in his line. And it is, of course, lighter than that very dark green there, but I think that would work well as well. And then in terms of the grays, I really couldn't find, even though Tim Holtz is known for kind of his more grungy and more brownish tones, I think they were all a bit brighter than the colors in this kit. So I wasn't able to find any browns that matched really well, but this pumice stone I felt like matched this tone pretty good. The pumice stone I feel like is slightly warmer in tone, but I would say that this is a close enough match that you can use it with this collection. And of course, in terms of reds, I don't happen to have the newest color, which is Lumberjack, I think is the name. I'm just getting that shipped to me from scrapbook.com right now. So if that is a bit of a closer match to any of these reds, I will put a comment down in the description box below as well. In terms of Ellie Edwards inks, so she has one red, which I feel like is pretty close to this red here. You can see that it has that kind of same warm red. And then in terms of greens, I didn't think that any of these particularly matched exactly with the colors of this kit, although all of them certainly pair quite well. I would say that I would probably go with Mackenzie over Olympia, just because this one does have more of those warm tones that you can find in this pattern paper. So you can see that there. This one here I think is a bit more bluish in tone, which I don't think, I mean, you can use either or, would be fine. I think it depends on which red you pair it with as well, because if you are going with a more warm tone red, I would maybe go with the Mackenzie green instead. And then if you were to go with like a more neutral looking red, then maybe Olympia would be fine. And then this is how Willamette compares to that more mossy green here. Willamette is obviously a more lighter green, but I think that that would work just fine. And then St. Helens, just wanted to compare this with the grays in this kit as well as the browns. So you'll see that St. Helens is a bit more warm toned than the gray in this kit. But it does kind of have that same, kind of has like a greenish background hue. So even if you worked that in with some of these trees, I think that would work really well. Let's talk briefly about the Stories of Christmas Past kit. Now, this kit has a more limited neutral color palette than the main kit, and the red in this one, the darker red, is a bit more of a purpley red than the burgundy in the main kit. So I don't know if you can see that here, but this one here is more purpley than this one is. This one is more of a reddish brick tone than this one, and that lends itself well to the velvet color in terms of the Altenew line. So you can see how that compares there, even though the velvet isn't quite as dark as the burgundy in the kit, compared to the mahogany bark, which I think works a lot better with the main kit's red, and you can see that here compared to that one. And in terms of the other red that's used in this kit, this is kind of slightly darker than this red here. I would say it's kind of that mid-tone red. Yeah, it's pretty close to the mid-tone red that is in the other kit. So that one I think was close to fire brick, kind of. You can see that this darker, this red in the kit is a bit darker than the fire brick, and the fire brick is a bit more orange in color, but that's how it would compare to the other colors in the kit. I do think that the fire brick pairs better with the main kit rather than this kit here. I think this one is a bit too orangey in color, so I would probably go more towards the velvet than the fire brick. So in terms of an alternate option, if you didn't want to go with the dark velvet, I think Vineyard Berry would be kind of the perfect more purplish red that's a bit lighter in tone than velvet is. And then in terms of other colors to pair with this kit, so I wouldn't necessarily try to match this craft color because I think that's just a bit too tone on tone. Like I prefer to have my colors pop a bit more. So even going with like a lighter brown compared to this craft, I think would work really nicely. So the sand dunes, for example, this is what the evening gray looks like with this kit. I think the evening gray is a bit too grayish in tone. This one here is a bit more warm tone, so I would probably opt out of the evening gray and even opt out of the dark chocolate. And then in terms of the greens, I think it's interesting to pair greens with these types of reds. Like I think that green doesn't look as nice. This evergreen I think would pair really well with this darker color. And then this mountain pine I think would pair really well with this lighter red that's a bit more warmer in tone. And you can see how those look in comparison with the rest of that kit. In terms of the Distress Oxide inks. So again, this aged mahogany is kind of the closest that we can get to this dark red color, and I think it does a pretty good job of matching that. Now, this red, of course, is a bit darker in tone. I do think the aged mahogany is just a tiny bit more of a warmer tone as well, but I think it does work pretty closely with that. And then I think Barn Door does a pretty good job with this red as well. Again, I'm not sure if the lumberjack red that just came out is maybe a bit closer to this red, but for now I think I will keep Barn Door in this collection. Rustic Wilderness I think pairs just as well with this dark red, maybe not this very, very dark red. And then in terms of other colors, I think Bundled Sage might be okay. I personally would just go with maybe a pumice stone with that as well, just keep things a bit more basic. Because I think if you bring in colors that are a bit too bright, then they kind of contrast a bit too much with the more neutral tones in this kit. In terms of Ali's inks, of course, redwoods would pair just as well with these reds here. I do think the redwoods is a bit lighter and more orange in tone than the lighter red in this kit, but that still works pretty well. In terms of greens, I would stay away from Willamette, I think, just because I think it's a bit too yellowish in tone compared to the more bluish reds that are in this kit. And as far as the other two greens go, I think I would probably prefer Mackenzie over Olympia. Olympia is just a bit too, I want to say like oxide. It kind of reminds me more of like an oxide tone compared to the Mackenzie. I think is more kind of saturated. So I think the Mackenzie would work a bit better in terms of this kit. And then St. Helens I think would pair pretty well. It does have kind of the same warm undertones as this craft color, but it does have that kind of interesting greenish gray tone that I think would work really well with this kit. Last but not least, we have the Paislee Press Kit, and I really can't talk about this kit without talking about the gorgeous 6x8 album here. That is, I bought two of them because this is going to be my main album, and I did buy one Joy one just in case I need 3 albums this year as usual. But most of the colors in this kit are kind of similar to the ones in the main kit, and I'll show you what I mean. So this red here is quite similar to this mid-tone red here. Of course, I did print these out using my Epson printer, so the colors might not be exactly the same as the physical kit for the Paislee Press Kit, but I think that red does match quite closely to these two reds here, and then the greens in this kit match the greens in the main kit as well, with the exception of this lighter kind of bluish green here. But this green does appear in the floral pattern in this album. So just in terms of colors that match this kit, for all to new I chose Velvet as kind of the darker red to go with these darker reds that you see in this kit. And then I chose Heartbeat as the kind of more brighter red. You can see how that matches there. In terms of greens, I just have this evergreen here that I thought matched pretty well with the greens in this kit. There isn't really anything in the Altenew line that is as blue as the green here in that kit, but I thought evergreen was a pretty close match again. And then you have some kind of interesting additions of browns in this kit as well. So you have this more khaki brown as well as this brown here. So I picked out 2 more neutral tones, the Rocky Shore as well as the Sand Dune, to kind of go with those more neutral patterns there. In terms of the Distress Oxides, for reds, I have Candied Apple as my main red. So that one goes pretty closely with the red in this kit. There is kind of this pinkish beige tone that I really liked with Tattered Rose. I thought that this worked really well. It just kind of gives like that lighter look. You can see it better when I tilt it away from the light. For the greens, I picked out Rustic Wilderness. Even though this isn't a close exact match with the greens in this kit, I think the tones kind of go really well together. And then for that kind of khaki-ish brown, I picked Frayed Burlap to kind of go with the browns in this kit. And then last but not least, we have Ali Edwards inks. So in terms of the red, of course, Redwoods is always a great color to go with the reds in this kit. In terms of the greens, I think both of these would work for the Paislee Press Kit in this case, because you do have some of those more bluish undertones. So I think Mackenzie and Olympia would both look great. And then I kept St. Helens as the kind of more neutral color. I think it does still work well because it has those greenish undertones that kind of pull in the greenish undertones in the khaki brown. And that's about it for my ink pairings for the Ali Edwards kits. So next up, I will be doing ink pairings for all of the other kits that I have that are not Ali Edwards. So I think there are like 5 collections I need to work through. So that might take me a bit of time, but I'll hopefully have those posted on this YouTube channel next week. Thanks so much for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.